bless the people that are listening, that struggling addict out there that might need to hear a message. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
You gotta get uncomfortable, but get comfort.
There's some help, and it ain't on the way. It's already waiting for you.
This little pill right here could take over your life, and I found that out the hard way. Mission statement of this podcast highlights stories of people that I've met in my journey in recovery. All right, man. Perfect. So we're here with Heath. Heath H, right?
Heath H.
And I think I've known Heath. I've seen Heath before Heath knew who I was, right? I think the first time I seen you was probably at a speaker jam in Stockton when I was still in treatment. And I always liked the way you carried yourself, right? And then I've been lucky enough to hear you carry the message, right? You brought it to our little hometown in Los Banos, and you've been a guy that I've looked up
bathrooms.
to. In the bathrooms, yes. It's really the baths, but
baths,
we'll roll with the bathrooms,
okay.
right? It's resembling a bathroom these days.
In
but
that little church.
And honestly, like, I got invited to chair a meeting out here in Modesto, right? And you gave me a good compliment, right? And I was really insecure.
Really?
And I said, man, if you wanted to hear the best part of that, I'll tell you in the parking lot. And then you schooled me. You said, you know what? Like, so you think all these people that thanked you for your share, you think they're liars, right? You said, and you told me that's your ego, right? Like God carried the message through you. So whatever you said was supposed to be said. And for me, that was a learning experience. I said, whoa, right? I still got a lot more to learn, right? And so I'm super grateful for people like yourself that God's put in my path along the way to learn from and look up to, and you're still here. You're still clean, right? And so when I'm honored that you were willing to sit down and do this with us. So what's up, Heath?
Me too. What's up, man? What's up, people? What's up, YouTube land?
So what's your clean date, Heath?
My clean date is March 28th, 2005, and March 27th is probably more of a significant day to me because that was my last day using. March 28th was really actually like the day that I pretty much slept because I was awake for like 3 years on meth. You know what I'm saying? So, so yeah, March 28th, 2005.
So I got to imagine like that day means a lot to you, right? Like what does that day mean to you?
You know, March 28th, 2005. I get emotional when I think of it because that was the day when I felt like something in the air was changing. Something was just different. I didn't know what it was, and that day I hold with pride. I hold it close to my heart. It's a day where everything changed in my life, even though I didn't know that things were going to change.
Right.
You know, yeah. And it was the day when everything went from really horrible and really messed up and bad, and just like a horror story, man, is what it felt like, you know. Some people say we've been to hell, but for me, I felt like I was in a horror film, you know what I mean? And that was the day that it changed and life started to happen for me.
Right.
Yeah.
So like, you know, like where we hang out, like we typically don't tell war stories, and that's not what I'm really asking for.
Yeah.
But what I want to know is,
I'm fine with telling.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
So like, what did it look like? I mean, and you can go as far back as you want, because some people stretch it all the way back to childhood. Some people start, I was here and this is what happened. But like, what did it look like for Heath growing up? Like, what did life look like for you coming up?
Life for me growing up, man, I was raised in the best of molds. You know what I mean? Like I had a mom and dad that adopted me at a month old. I didn't know anything about my birth mother. I knew around third grade. When you're in third grade, what was that, 8 years old?
That's 8. I got a third grader. I got a second grader going to third. Yeah, 8 years old.
8 years old. So when I was 8 years old, I was wondering where babies come from. And, you know, and that's just one of those things that come to your mind when you're a kid. Like, what? How does this happen?
Right.
And I started asking where they come from. And that was when my mom, told my dad he needed to talk to me. And I remember clear as day, standing in the kitchen. Whew. I was standing in the kitchen and my dad was telling me, we love you and we care about you, but your mother who was raising you, your mother that is Linda, is not your real mother. Your real mother was 14 years old when she had you, and she could not take care of you, and so she gave you to us. And we wanted you in our own home, and we wanted you to make you our own and in our own family. And yeah, dude, I didn't hear we wanted you, we loved you. I heard, why didn't she want me?
Right.
What's wrong with me? And I carried that for a long time. I honestly think that was one of the main reasons why I had so many resentments towards women, why I couldn't trust women, because I felt abandoned by my mom, even though I knew no factors other than she was 14. So an 8-year-old trying to understand like why your mother wouldn't keep you, it doesn't compute that she put you up for adoption.
Right.
So, yeah, and I was teased a lot for it, man. Kids didn't understand what adoption meant. So they would throw rocks at me and call me an orphan on the way home and all types of stuff, man, and tease me. Even my best friend that I confided in and told, like, hey, I'm adopted. He turned around and told all his friends, and they all laughed at me about it, man. And so that was where I instantly started feeling like separate from everybody else.
Right.
But I always felt like the odd man out. I always felt like that. There's this picture in my family that my mom has, and we went somewhere. It was when I was a teenager, and we went somewhere out in the hills, out in Placerville. And it's a picture of my mom and my dad and me and my sister. My sister's 6 years older than me. She's also adopted. And so in this picture, if you look at it, there's them both standing next to each other, and they're both turning into her, and she's smiling and laughing, and they're both, it looks like they're talking to her. And I'm literally like about probably 4 feet away from them, looking in. And that's what my life felt like most of the time.
Right.
I felt like I was always looking into my family because I never fit. And, it wasn't until like recovery, dude, like when I started writing my 4th step and I started writing some of the stuff in my 6th step and character defects and stuff and all these things and even assets, I didn't realize that one of my main assets is I wasn't supposed to fit in. I was always supposed to stand out.
Right.
I was always supposed to be like the one that like lights up the room, man. The one that like comes in and smiling and being hyper and crazy, and that's my personality. Right. And the more that I ran away from that, the more I was running away from who God wanted Heath to be. So yeah, growing up was not a natural process for me. Other people, because like I said, when my dad told me that I was adopted, right? The disease was present long before the first time I ever used a drug.
Right.
So at that moment, I wasn't feeling like, oh, this is a wonderful thing. Instead, I went right straight towards the negative.
Right.
So, yeah. So growing up, man, was not a natural process. I was an ADHD kid, man. You couldn't give me coffee. You couldn't give me sugar. Don't give that kid sugar. You know what I'm saying? He's going to be bouncing off the walls in a couple minutes, man.
And you probably always wanted more sugar.
More, yeah, dude, for real,
Right.
all the time. Yeah, we'd go to my aunt and uncle's house, and she'd have candy dishes in every room. And then by the end of the day, man, all the candy dishes would be empty, and I'd be on the couch like,
Right.
stomach ache, got a sugar hangover. I can't figure out why I'm sick, But that was before even drugs, man.
Yeah, because we talked about it before we started the podcast. It's a disease of more, right? And we typically don't think about the after effects, right? Like as a kid, a whole dish of candy, right? Not good, right? And that's I understand that because I've always been the same way, right? Like if there's a 12-pack of orange sodas and I'm a kid, I'm gonna drink 10 of them if I can, right? And even like you were talking about, the friends, right? Like friends teasing you. These are the people that you trust and you love, right? So I got to imagine that starts to develop some different types of behaviors, as a kid. You feel like, oh man, I don't belong with these people, right? And these are my friends and they're treating me a certain way. So I got to imagine like you start building up some walls, right? Some trust issues. Like what does that look like moving forward? I mean,
well, my trust issues, like I was no dummy as a kid. I knew that like okay, on my block, I was raised on Auto Drive in Stockton, not Auto AUTO, Auto OTTO.
Podcast is brought to you by our friend and realtor Naomi Townsends with Keller Williams Property Teams. She'll help you in every step of the way, whether you're buying or selling a home, commercial property, mobile home, or even a vacant lot. In the last few years, she's helped hundreds of families buy their dream homes in the Central Valley, Bay Area, Monterey, and even the Sacramento area. Check her Zillow profile where she has a perfect 5-star ranking. She is also bilingual in Spanish. In 2021, she was in the national top 2 in her brokerage. Please, guys, check out her Instagram, Sold by Naomi, or reach out to her at 408-623-1414. All the links are in the bio. Remember, guys, support those who support us. This podcast is brought to you by our friends at Sorensen's Ace Hardware, located at 402 Washington Avenue in Los Banos, proudly serving the community since 1947. Please check out our friend at Sorensen's for all your hardware needs. Come on, guys, support those who support us. Thanks, Sorensen's. Sorensen's also has a Modesto location located at 1433 Coffee Road. Modesto, true value for all your hardware needs. For all of our people out in the Modesto area, please support those who support us. Thank you.
North side, kind of middle class suburbs, sort of lightweight suburbs. 2-story house, 5-bedroom house. You know what I'm saying? With like a pool in the backyard, and we got that house after living we were living in like the hood, like off of Kelly Drive. For those that don't know, Kelly Drive is like really, really bad neighborhood, you know, in Stockton. I'm sure everywhere that somebody has a Kelly Drive, you know what I mean? So we lived there until our house was being finished built. And so we moved into that house because my dad, you know, had a really good job. He was always, he worked for PG&E. And yeah, so I would say living in that area, it was a nice area. But I learned how to, my trust issues just kind of, I don't know really how to say it, man. Like I didn't really, I trusted kids just because I trusted kids just because I wanted to. I loved other kids and I played with other kids because I wanted them to love and play with me. I wanted them to like me, you know, and that innocence was lost when I started realizing kids are not always nice.
Right.
Growing up, kids are actually really cruel. They might be acting a certain way because of how they're treated at home. You know what I mean? They might bully other kids because they're being bullied by their older brothers. But see, as a young kid, you don't really that doesn't really, you know what I mean? You don't process that. All you see is like, hey, you know, I'm happy, I'm go-lucky, I'm loving, and then other people aren't that way towards you, and it kind of, yeah. So I don't know if I'm getting off base.
No, but how does that start to change a person? I mean, because I got to imagine, like, you know, you have this happy-go-lucky personality, and then you feel like you're put down or treated a certain way. I got to imagine that starts to change you in a way. I mean, do you carry that?
You know, yeah, it changed me drastically. I was raised in church, and so being a church boy, being a Pentecostal kid, you know what I mean? I knew that we dressed different, we looked different. And I say we because Pentecostal, anybody knows anything about Pentecostals, man, they're the ones that you see with the guy who always has short hair, no facial hair, dressed nice, you know, doesn't listen to worldly music. The women, they look like they're from a third world country because they have, like, you know, long skirts, long hair, no makeup. Like, some of them need some makeup, but, you know. But hey, I'm just keeping it 100, you know. And no jewelry and all that stuff, no worldly music, which is like anything on the radio. Everything has to be like music from church, music from worship music, whatever, on whatever Christian channel. So growing up like that, I remember kids used to like trip because like they'd be wearing these like short. This is back in the 80s when short shorts were the thing, and I would have them clam digger shorts, you know, or you call them clam diggers. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Like, they go way past your knee.
Yeah.
And kids used to be like, "Why don't you wear regular shorts?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's because of my religion." but I didn't know how to say, like, it's because of my standards, and we believe in this and we believe in that. I just did that because that's what my mom bought me to wear.
Right.
So I always felt like different, right? Not only because I was, felt different already, I always felt different because of my religious beliefs growing up. Yeah.
So like, where does that start? So, growing up, and I got to imagine, like, you learned some things on Kelly Drive that probably weren't the same as the new neighborhood, right? And so you feel different, right? And then the religious beliefs, dressing different, feeling different, right? And then feeling like you have to come up with excuses on why you're different. Like, where does that start to lead you? Like for Heath, like, I mean, does that feeling terminally unique, right? Does that lead you into like, okay, now I got to use something to change the way I feel?
So, for me, my first drug of choice, Auto Drive, it wasn't Kelly Drive. Kelly Drive was a mile down the street. But believe it or not, I always ended up there.
Right.
Plantation Avenue, you know what I'm saying? Plantation Drive and Kelly Drive and all these like lower class neighborhoods, you know what I'm saying? But for me, I think, so like kind of like what propelled me towards drugs was, I think my first drug of choice was people's attention.
Right.
And it was also making myself sick or faint so I can go home sick. I would literally, and then we would do it as a game. Remember that game? Yeah. And they like, or they put you in your chest and squeeze you and then you fall out.
Yeah.
Right? And then you'd like let the kid like twitch and, like a salmon on the seashore.
And you'd all laugh, right? Everybody. Yeah.
And everyone's laughing at you. I got this big bruise on your forehead. That was such a cool experience. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like I literally was out and I felt like I was at home sleeping. And that whole thing going on.
Yeah.
And for me, that was like, whoa, that felt good. Right? This is before drugs. You know what I mean? This is like, and then the other thing was I liked, I don't know why I liked fighting and I liked getting in trouble. Even if it meant going home and I was going to get a whooping by my dad, right? Because my dad spanked us, right? Mm-hmm. I wasn't raised in a home where my mom and dad beat each other, yelled at each other, screamed at each other. The only persons that really did the hitting was me and my sister. And that was just because we were just kids playing or mad at each other. So for me, like, I think bullying, because I would get bullied, and then I would return the bullying to someone that I felt like was somebody that was potential.
Yeah.
So that was like another drug, another kind of like high for me. And yeah, man. And candy, candy, sugar. But later on, like I think what it graduated to, what it excelled to was cigarettes. Right. I think, if I remember right, man, let me think. I'm going to try to like put this in perspective. I've never really told this part of the story, of my story. We used to have these construction sites behind our house in North Stockton. And in North Stockton at that time, there was a lot of houses development. And behind there was like a field of like jackrabbits and mice and, you know, whatever was back there. And we'd go back there and run around with our BB guns and try to hunt jackrabbits and everything. And then later, there was houses all of a sudden being built back there. It was like, you know, making roads. And then now they got these construction sites with houses. And we'd go in there and we'd find, I don't know what it is with construction workers, but they will leave pornography magazines and cigarettes. I don't know who, maybe he was just drinking and they forgot their cigarettes at work. I don't know, but we'd find the cigarettes. And I remember that one time when we were smoking a cigarette, we were both like kind of passing it, and my buddy lit one for me, and we were going to pass it around. And he put it, and I put it to my lips, and I went, and his reaction when I saw his eyes get all big and go, oh, whoa, right? Boom, right? I'm in. Right. I'm accepted. Right? I'm the crazy guy now. And I think that kind of is where that was like almost like my theme kind of in a way, my persona that I felt like I needed to carry with me, as I'm the crazy white kid, right? I'm the crazy white boy that will do anything you say And it was for your acceptance. I didn't find that out till later, but
Right.
yeah, it was for people's acceptance. And so, yeah, pornography, magazines, and cigarettes. I think that was one of the first kind of highs that I had experienced.
I can identify.
Yeah.
Right? Like I can
Yeah.
identify.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in that same thing, like I suffered from that too. Like I found a group of friends that all did the same thing, right? Like pushing the envelope.
Yeah.
We collect all the beer caps in the night to see who drank the most,
Right,
or
right.
if there was an odd number of hits of acid, everybody would rush to take that last one just to say
Right,
that I was the one that did more, right? Never thinking about the consequences.
Right. Right.
So I can
Well, the
identify.
consequences aren't important at all.
No,
You worry about the consequences later,
right.
like after.
It takes us years clean to learn how to play out the tape and
Yeah,
be like, oh,
yeah.
maybe that's not such a good
Right,
idea, right?
Right. But and if you're not being restored to sanity,
Right.
Right. Restored means to bring back, like to a natural state. Right. So if you're not being restored to sanity, you can play that whole tape through, and it'll still make sense at the end.
Right.
If you're caught up in insanity, you will think that this is actually a bright idea. This is a good idea.
Right.
And next thing you know, you're paroling from a bright idea or coming back from a relapse with a bright idea.
Yeah. And thank God that I've been fortunate enough in this time to put together a little stretch of time to where I can actually decipher right from wrong. But it wasn't that way for a long time.
Yeah, yeah.
Like when Metallica put out their album and it was entitled Hardwired to Self-Destruct. I'm like, that's my life. that's me,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, right.
That's me.
Running off the rails on a crazy train.
Yeah, because I could take, like, and it was funny. I was sharing with a guy, like, I used to like to blow shit up right before a holiday, right? Like, that was always my pattern, right? Like, right before everything was going to get really good, I would self-destruct, right? Thank God it's not that way today, right? So where does this high of being the crazy guy, where does that take you, right? Like, you figured out, like, taking that hit of that cigarette and seeing that look in your friend's eyes, and then you just taking it and running with it.
I think where I started running with it was, okay, so like any kid, good kid, bad kid, whatever, I would cut school. One time I cut school and I tried to head home real quick because my friend's parents were going somewhere, so I had to get out of the house, and I was literally walking home, and my mom caught me. My mom drove by. What are you doing? There's no other kids walking from school. It's they let us out early.
Right.
But you know what? Honestly, drugs didn't really start coming into the picture until I was like in. Oh man. Wow. Okay, so I was probably like 10 or 11. And my dad used to have these. He used to get these gag gifts because they knew he didn't drink. They knew he was like a stout, or a strict religious man. And so because he didn't drink, they would give him gag gifts of whiskey or something like that. And there was this whiskey bottle that was always sitting in the den. We called it the den. It's where all the books were, and basically like a man cave,
Right.
But it's like basically my mom's stuff too, because she has all her books in there. But anyway, there was a whiskey bottle that was sitting up on that shelf, and it sat there forever. And I had this just this thing in my head where I was just like, it just hit me like, what does that taste like? And I wanted to try it, And, of course, I'm taking a sip and then a sip and a sip, and I'm realizing it's half full. And so then I start putting water in it to make it, look like it was, until it's not even, it's like an amber color now,
Right.
instead of this dark bourbon color. But yeah, I remember that warm sensation going down, and then that feeling of that, that wooziness. That was kind of like where it started, but that wasn't. I didn't go around running around drinking after that.
Right.
It literally was progressive. I found myself in 8th grade. I had gotten kicked out of the Christian school that I was going to, because I was writing graffiti in the bathrooms and around the school and stuff, and they had their last straw with me. And they kicked me out of that school, and so I had to go back to a public school. And I started going to this public school in Stockton, Delta Sierra. And when I was going to Delta Sierra, like I don't know what it is. I as a magnet, I like attract like trouble. I attract people to me, you know, and I started attracting this couple of these kids to me, and we were hanging out, and they were like metalheads, right? They liked Metallica and AC/DC, and you know, I don't even like that stuff, man. I'm a hip hop kid, you know. I grew up liking Run DMC and you know, and just liking like all them old hip hop, you know, like the ba wada da ba dang a dang digga digga, you know. That's the type of stuff I grew up listening to, like Curtis Blow, and you know, and I liked that stuff because my mom and dad didn't allow me to listen to it because of our religious background. So I would like find these like CDs or get them from my friend. Well, it wasn't CDs then, it was tapes then. And I would take them and I would hide them in my closet. And I would, and that's the stuff that I was attracted to. So back to like the guys that, the kids that I was like attracted to. So they were like metalheads and everything. And even though I didn't really like that music, it was like, I hung out with them, you know. They had long hair, I didn't, you know. I would get the jean jacket like they did, you know, and with the ripped up chucks, I'd like rip up my chucks to make them look cool and stuff. And yeah, man. So I remember when they had, they said they were going to get some weed, and we went into the side yard of one of the guys in one of the kids' house, and we were smoking weed, but nobody told me how to smoke it. So I was like, I thought of it like I did with the cigarette. And I didn't get high, I got a headache. And then I was like, when's it going to start working? And come to find out, like I wasn't even smoking it right. So I thought, weed's bunk. This is bogus. Like why do people even like this stuff? But mind you, at that time, all the way up until I was like in 12th grade, I was on Ritalin, right? Ritalin, Dexedrine, Psyalert. And for those that don't know, like that's almost basically Ritalin is one chemical compound off of methamphetamine.
Right.
Or amphetamines. So basically, like my teacher like pulled my mom aside and told her, you know, we need to see about getting him on a different medication because he's really all like, you know, hyper at school. But then when he's going home, he's coming down. And my mom noticed it. Like what? How was school? It was fine. It was cool. Did you do anything? Learn anything today? Yeah. And that was it. You know, like so. I think I'm not saying I blame the doctors or I blame my parents for putting me on Ritalin. Why and it chose to do meth later on, but it definitely was something I was really comfortable with when I tried it for the first time.
Yeah, and I believe there's generations of kids that were treated, whether it be Ritalin, and then kids like my age, because I'm a little younger than you, with opiates, right? And we get to the point where we don't blame, right? We take accountability for what we did, but in my opinion, I believe that there's a whole generation, you know, of the opiate kids that turned into the heroin addicts, that turned into the fentanyl crisis, and then your generation is the Ritalin kids that turned into the methamphetamine and all that stuff, right? And so there's definitely a logical pathway to being medicated as a kid to using as an adult and thinking that this is the solution to what I'm feeling, right? So I don't think you're off base. I know we don't, you know, I know we take accountability for what we did, right? So we got to own it to get through it. Right. But at the same time, you know, there's a pathway there, right? You know, and that's why I have a daughter, and when she was young, they talked about medicating her because she had a high, and we just found creative outlets for that kid, right? Because I learned from, you know, that medication isn't the solution to my problem, right? And for a lot of people it is too. There's a lot of people where we hang out that are dual diagnosed and we aren't doctors, right? So that's a blurry line. Right.
And the diversity is a trip too. And where we hang out, whatever you want to call it, the clubhouse, whatever you know, wherever we are, there's a diversity of people, and there's a diversity of people in recovery, to where like with you were able to, like, your drug of choice was in the medicine cabinet or at the doctor's office or the ER.
Yeah.
Right. My drug of choice, I had to go find on a street corner, or I had to go find over at Chewy and Beto's house or whoever had it, you know. Which is crazy because now it's like you can go get weed over at a weed shop if you have a weed card.
Right.
And that's still a reservation for me. I'm gonna be honest with you. You know, like, dang, man, like we got this bunk weed back in the day. We got that swag weed, you know, that smelled like gasoline because it was in a gas tank coming across the border.
You get excited to get the corner because you know there's more in there, right?
Yeah.
I got the corner.
You got to separate the seeds and the stems.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I see, and they just get stuff like, you know, on spot like that, you know. You can have a fake card and still go. I don't know how that all works, man. But yeah. So yeah, the diversity is just crazy. How there's people that just do pills,
right?
And there's people that have just did weed, right? But no matter what the problem is, no matter whether you do this or whether you do that or you go back and forth, you're still switching seats on the Titanic. No matter where you sit, you're gonna drown.
Right. You're
still gonna go down. So, yeah, I mean, and that was kind of like my thing, man. Like, I mean, back and forth between meth and alcohol. You know?
And so, like, going back, like you were talking about the teacher starting to notice, right, that you're up and down, then mom starts noticing. So what happens after that?
A lot of counseling, a lot of psychiatrists. I felt different from other kids at school because I was always having to get allergy shots. I grew up I grew up with asthma, you know, all that. So the road from dealing with the psychiatrists and the Ritalin and all that, honestly, man, I think where it all started after the 8th grade was when I went into high school. I was cutting school, and I was cutting school in high school. I had a PE class that was always first period. And when it's wintertime and you have to be out there kicking a soccer ball around in the fog, not a good time.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then you got to run in real quick, get yourself warm, take a shower and dress and go to the next class. So whatever the justifications may be, I decided that, you know, there's these kids that live here in Lodi because I lived on the very edge of Stockton where it was Lodi Unified School District. And since I'm already like basically 20, 30 minutes away from home, because they would drive us on a bus at 6 in the morning all the way through all these cow fields and orchards and whatever, and drive us to Lodi High School. And here I was as a freshman cutting school with kids, and you know, they were kids that just did what kids do, but they smoked weed.
Right.
And I remember one time my buddy smoked me out, and I was so stuck. They were like, I was watching TV, and then they split the screens. This is back in the day when you could split the screens with different channels. And they were splitting the screens because I remember Tom and Jerry was over here, and then they had Gilligan's Island over here. And it would split, and then they would switch it back and forth between 3 or 4. And they're watching me, and I realize what they're doing, and they're laughing because they can see I'm stuck, right? One of the best feelings ever, dude. Just sitting there, just every problem went away. Even though I was cutting school, every fear of being found out that I was cutting school went away. Every rejection from a teacher went away. Every rejection from any kid that didn't like me went away. And it was like, I felt good.
You didn't feel different.
Huh?
You didn't feel different in that
point.
point.
No, I didn't feel different. I didn't feel abandoned. I didn't feel separate then. I felt a part of, you know. Until later, what had happened was after that whole freshman year of cutting school, because of that, I didn't know, but because of that, I was going to have to spend the next 3 years doing Saturday schools and night schools to make up for all the classes and the credits that I missed. But then beyond that, a teacher pulled my dad aside and was like, yeah, he comes to school all the time with red eyes. I don't know if it's his allergies, wintertime, right? And I think you should take him to go get drug tested, you know. And thank God for that counselor. I can't remember her name, but I could see her face clearly. And she told my parents to take me to get a drug test, and I went to a treatment center at 15 years old. And I got clean and sober. Yeah, you know, and we can say that, clean and sober. Yeah.
Yeah. We can say whatever we want.
We can say whatever we want. Yeah.
And so like that's the start of your recovery at 15 years old.
Right.
And so, like, what does that look like for a 15-year-old walking into a treatment center and them telling you got to change everything, and you know, and all the things they tell us when we try to get clean? Like, how does that stick for a 15-year-old?
Well, for one, I was being interviewed and talked to, kind of recruited by another 15, 16-year-old, and he even though I passed the drug test, they still said that I still had all the signs of of a person that needs help.
Right.
And so he was interviewing me, and then I heard that there was like, and it was almost kind of like, oh, I can be cool now. I can be that kid that goes to rehab. You know, a kid that had a problem with drugs, and I can go to rehab.
Right.
And not even caring like that it was going to cost, my parents were going to cost like spend $5,000 something or whatever on a treatment center for 30 days. It didn't matter. What mattered was like, I'm going to have a place to hang out for like 30 days away from home. You know, even though I loved being at home, it was like, all right, yeah, sure. I think I'll try it. And, yeah, man, I honestly, went to meetings. I was going over to the, other fellowship, right? Well, I was going to, can I say it?
Yeah.
Okay. I was going to AA, and I went there for like probably a year. But I wasn't going really to hear a message. It sounded cool, but I was going to get the cigarettes. I was going to hang out and smoke cigarettes with old guys, you know what I mean? And hear their stories. And I remember my mom would be like, did you smoke? No, I didn't smoke, I promise. You know, they were smoking, you know. And, but yeah, I did that for about like a year. And then I kind of thought, man, you know what? Maybe I need to get involved in church. Maybe that will help. So I got involved with my youth group, and I got involved with church. And not that that's a bad thing. Anybody who does anything to get clean, if it works for you, it works for you. You know what I'm saying? And it worked for me. It worked for me for 6 years. And then I joined the military. And I have realized from that experience that if there's anywhere where you want to learn how to be a professional drug addict or a professional criminal, is either in treatment, in a rehab, or the military. Right. Especially the Navy, because you know, Navy's got just a negative stigma. You know, we got a bad stigma, a negative persona of you know, people that drink all the time and sleep with prostitutes and stuff like that. That's what sailors do. You know? And yeah, and so that was so I went into the backing up for just 1 second. I was dealing with a major heartache from like one of my first loves. We dated for like 3 months, and it was so traumatizing. She broke up with me. Oh my God! Right. You know, and I can't believe it. You know, and we broke up, and it was on Christmas Day. I had just came back from a trip with her and her family down to Disneyland for like a week. You know what I'm saying? And I couldn't understand why she was being distant from me. And I come back trying to ask her how her Christmas was, and did she get everything she wanted and all her presents? And she was like, I don't love you anymore. I don't want to be with you. And it just devastated me. And so I did a geographical. I called a recruiter, and they told me, you know, come down here and take a test. I took the test, and they interviewed me. And next thing you know, I was going to the medical enlistment program, MEPS, and swearing my hand up and taking an oath, and then I was government property.
And it's funny because you touched on like when you were an 8-year-old standing there in the kitchen getting that news, right? And we often, like you said, look for the negative in things, right? You didn't hear that here's a family that wants to love you. You're lucky to have them. You heard, man, my mom left me, right? And the same thing joining the Navy, right? It's not like, hey, this is an opportunity for me to see the world and do something productive with my life. You heard, hey, here's my golden ticket to go be a sailor, right? And party, right? And even like me, I know the first time I went to DUI class, all I ended up was with a bunch of new hookups, right? Right. But when I went to that rehab, I was ready, right? And so it's where you're at the time, right? And when that disease is taking hold, you go to the Navy and it's like, hey, here's a golden ticket, let's do this, right? And so that was probably your college education of partying right there, right? And so what does it look like for Heath in the Navy, man? Like,
first, hey, is it cool to get me a water? I got cotton mouth, man.
Yeah.
I'm about to spit out a T-shirt right now.
Would you like a seltzer water, sir?
I would like a seltzer water. There you go.
And there's the man behind the man that makes it happen, Jesse. A round of applause for Jesse.
What's that part in Wizard of Oz? Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Yeah, right.
The man behind the scenes right there. Okay, so the question again is, go ahead.
So you find the Navy, you're coming off that heartbreak, right? And this is your geographical. I'm going to go to the Navy, and it's going to change everything. Yeah. But you probably went in there with the intention of like, now I'm going to go do like, what does that look like for Heath? Like join the Navy, because you described it as like, now I got to be a sailor and do what sailors do, right?
Yeah, and it wasn't just that. I was going to step out from underneath the umbrella protection of all my church family, at-home family, and not be under the watchful eye of other pastors and other people in church.
Yeah.
And I was literally moving to another state, Great Lakes, Illinois, all the way up by Chicago. So I was moving for a geographical, trying to run away from myself. No matter where you go, there you are, right? But I all of a sudden didn't realize the factors that were going on. I left in May. My birthday's May 28th, and I turned 21 in boot camp. So when I came out of boot camp, literally that day that I was out, I found myself, after 6 years of being away from alcohol and drugs and being all involved in church and all that stuff, I found myself in a strip club with a friend of mine I was in boot camp with, getting lap dances and drinking.
And it's on and cracking.
And I remember that feeling like of drinking that first drink and feeling it go down my throat. And I remember that warm feeling like I was talking about, that warm comfort. And you know what? Like that right there started things just taking off completely. I screwed off my A school. I was supposed to be a nurse, what they call a corpsman, hospital corpsman. And I pretty much screwed that whole opportunity off with just drinking. Every time I was out of class, I'd go run across the street and go to the next bar or go to the next liquor store and get a bottle of Alizé. And here I am in a back alley, when just, drinking Alizé and getting drunk, when just not too long ago I was in church and all, Mr. Goody or whatever. And screwing off my A school, which your A school, for those that don't know, that's basically like college. You're training for like what you're going to do in the military. And that's what they call it in the Navy. And screwing it off, like kind of like really, it was kind of like the shame and the guilt hit me, because now I have to call my parents and tell them, hey, it's not working. They're going to give me this other job. So they gave me a job as a boatswain's mate, and I went from Chicago, right? Oh, and not only that, let me explain this. Chicago was the first time when I was in the military, I heard from other people that were like ravers, the ones with the whistles and the big old Jankos.
Oh, that was the scene back then, too.
Yeah, and the neon necklaces and stuff and the long shirts. I had a long Gumby shirt. That was my name back in the day, Gumby, right? I thought that was so cool, Gumby, right? And I found out from other people that were in that scene, the rave scene in Chicago, that you can take LSD in the military and they can't pop you for it because they have to give you a spinal tap to detect LSD in your system. I don't know if that's true, but I believed it.
Right.
I believed it, and so I started using LSD, and then it graduated to ecstasy, and then from ecstasy to methamphetamine. The methamphetamine started when I moved to San Diego, because I since I lost my A school in Chicago, they sent me to San Diego, and I was at Naval Air Station North Island, right there in Coronado Island. And I remember the only thing that mattered to me was, as soon as I got there, I was going to find, because it was almost like a network. Hey, so-and-so is going to be there. He's a part of the scene down there. He used to be up here. Here's his number. or here's where he is. And I found that dude. He was in my birthing. He was in my area where we worked. And that dude like told me where all the raves were and all the parties and stuff. And so here I was, and the only thing that mattered was getting to the next party, finding the next bar. I literally walked from Naval Air Station North Island, where I was on this the USS Constellation on this aircraft carrier. I literally walked probably 2 miles till I found a bar, and started my drinking, started my stuff back up again.
So how long did it take you from like graduating drugs to where things start becoming unmanageable? I got to assume it took off quick.
Yeah. So I have to say this. Drugs doesn't become bad right away, because if it did, we wouldn't do it.
Right.
Right? It was great. It felt so wonderful that I couldn't get enough of it. Like we were talking about more.
Yeah.
I couldn't get enough of it, and it got to a point where it was I even got sent to like a inpatient kind of treatment thing on the boat that I was on, because they thought that my drinking was getting out of hand. They thought that my using was getting out of hand. But they didn't want to acknowledge. This is kind of like before the time when, things were a certain way. They didn't want to acknowledge that I had a drug problem. They just called it an alcohol problem.
Right.
And, so how it started to go downhill, I got kicked out. I got kicked out of the Navy. I got a general release, a general under honorable conditions discharge. And what that is like the second to best discharge. It's right below an honorable discharge. They gave me that because I didn't want to have a bad conduct discharge or dishonorable discharge hanging around my neck while I'm trying to find a job when I get out. So luckily, the captain, after so many times getting in trouble and being at captain's mast, because I was in trouble all the time, and they would restrict me to the boat. I wouldn't be able to go see certain countries because I'd be stuck to the boat because I got in trouble for something stupid like being late, to work. So, I got kicked out. I had to go back home. And I remember we were sitting, it was October 30th, and we were sitting by a drive-through menu, which was right over by an after party to a rave that we were just like coming from or going to. And we were sitting there, and I was with this girl I was dating at the time, and I was like, holy crap, I'm a civilian. I'm a civilian now. And I thought that was so cool. And we're going to go party some more. But what I was doing was I was partying and celebrating basically the end of a career.
Right.
And it didn't matter to me. All that mattered was like, we're going to go get high now. We're going to go pop some ecstasy. And they call it candy flipping.
Yeah.
Yeah. Listening to rave techno music and stuff like that. Yeah.
So your priorities had totally shifted.
Yeah, really bad.
On to the next one.
Yeah.
So how long does it take from that point to where you get the gift of desperation, right, that we talk about? Like, how long did it take, and then what did it look like when you finally click? Like, something's got to change here, right? Like,
well, okay, so this is just for clarity, because I understand your question. But if you look up the word gift, right? The gift is a thing given willingly to someone without payment, a present, right? And then if you look up desperation, right? We're having a little study here, huh?
I like it.
Desperation. If you look it up, it says a state of despair, typically one which results in rash or extreme behavior. So it's almost an oxymoron. Gift, something given to you without, as a present, basically. But then it's also a despair, like having despair, and it's typically of one's rash, irrational behavior and extreme behavior.
Right.
So I wouldn't necessarily say that it was the gift of desperation. I realized that the drugs were not working anymore.
Right.
It wasn't even desperation, because desperation was gone by that time. I was by that time by the time I stopped using on March 27th, like it was gone. It didn't even matter how bad I looked. It didn't matter whether I smelled. It didn't matter whether I was wearing the same clothes for days and days. It didn't matter what I looked like. I didn't care less. Like I remember my sister saying to me one time, "Have you seen what you look like?" Like it pains me to see it as your sister, and I know my nieces see it, but like, have you seen what you look like in the mirror? And it hurts me. I can't even imagine what mom and dad are going through. And I didn't care. I didn't care. So what? Screw you. Get me to the house. You know, I'm trying to get the keys from my dad. You know what I mean? Yeah. Desperation wasn't even a thing. And it wasn't a gift for me. It was I'm tired of feeling like a loser. I'm tired of being a disappointment. And I guess where it happened for me, honestly, man, so I used for probably about 10 years. And the drugs I was using was like I was just snorting it and smoking it with kids, right? I say kids, we were grown adults. We were acting like kids, I know that. we were running around the streets like kids, you know what I'm saying? But yeah. So smoking it and snorting it, and taking it in little like wads of toilet paper or putting them in little pills and taking meth that way. It just didn't work that way anymore. And I ran into someone that shot up. I literally was on my way home late at night. It's dark, and I drive by this old man, and I'm like, "Hey, what's up? You got a cigarette?" And he gives me a cigarette, and he asks me where I can get some, and I'm like, "Yeah." Next thing you know, I'm at that dude's bathroom while he's sticking a needle in my arm, and I looked away, and I felt that. I hope I'm not triggering anybody, but I felt that cough where your heart jump starts. And man, again, I fell in love, you know. I fell in love. I was running amok after that. And it was shameful because I had all these friends that were pothead friends, and they didn't like tweakers. They didn't like people, especially people shooting up. And it would suck because like here I would be after 3 or 4 days after, after shooting up. And I'd have to go over to their house and smoke weed with them, and I'm all, you know what I mean? Trying to bite my own ear, jaw jacking, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, got pick marks on my face and everything, and holes in my arms, and you know, and I had to play it off like nothing was going on. But I think that the part where I felt like I was just tired of feeling that way and the drugs weren't working was when I would have people over at my mom and dad's house, and they would go on vacation. And that was one of their things. They would go on vacation to get away from me, because I had them as a criminal. I'm not a criminal. I had them hostage in their own house, man. And they would literally lock up their stuff, like lock up their purses in a safe behind another closed door that's locked in that room behind another closed door, which is their main room, because I was always stealing from them. And if that didn't work, I would go outside and steal tools out of my dad's tool bench. You know, I found out ways to rig the freaking the locks, you know, and take the screws out of because of a wood cabinet. It was easy to just take the screws out and put them back in. And, I don't know how that was missing. I don't know where your grinder went. I don't know what happened to your drills, you know. And I think it was just that at that point I just got tired of like lying, man. And acting like everything's all right and stealing from my family. And I wasn't just stealing like their stuff. I was stealing their peace. I was stealing. My mom was sharing with me just recently that she would be in such fear. There was this one time she was in such fear because it's 2, 3 in the morning and somebody's coming knocking on the door asking for me. And my dad's not home. It's just her in the house. And I'm not there. And in my mom's mind, like, what does he owe them money for? Are they going to break in here? Or are they going to kill me? They were prisoners in their own home for a long time, dude. And I just got tired of the drugs not working, and so I don't know if I went off base there.
No, that's perfect. So how did you end up finding recovery? Right, like you're down a hole and things are looking pretty bleak for Heath. Like, do you find it through a treatment center again, or do you find it through walking into a 12-step fellowship? Like, how did you get the help that you desperately needed at that moment?
Right. Well, they say, religion, psychiatry, and what is it? Wasn't sufficient for us.
Yeah.
So psychiatry wasn't sufficient. I tried to go to mental health, and they were basically trying to tell me, like, you got to be crazy, right, for us to give you some help. Like crazy, like talking to yourself. But I do talk to myself, You just, I'm not. And so they really couldn't, and all they could do was say, okay, here's some meetings, which I didn't even look at that,
right.
And we have a halfway house that you could live in. So basically, they want to make money off of me by putting me in a halfway house and giving me medications. So I could already see they weren't trying to help me. Religion, I had already tried that. Didn't work. I think what started working where it started happening for me was, so I was in Lake Tahoe. I did another geographical. I moved all the way up to Lake Tahoe. My parents drove me up there, and I moved in with a buddy of mine. He was my drinking buddy, and so it was like kind of like switching seats on the Titanic. Like I was saying, like instead of just doing meth, now I can go up here and hang out with my boy and find a job, and we'll drink, And so I think the thing that and the reason why I ended up going up to Lake Tahoe was because my mom came into their house after I was having parties while they were off on vacation. My mom came in the house, and her whole jewelry box is missing, and they stole her wedding ring and a birthstone that her aunt gave her. That was like her favorite aunt, and she wanted them back, and she wanted them from me. And I told her I don't have them, and she was like, "What? Yes, you do." It's like, Mom, and this is my defense, Mom. If I wanted to steal it from you, I'd have stole it from you a long time ago. I didn't steal your ring. I think that was like an awakening as it's coming out of my mouth. Like we talked about it earlier, the periodic jolts of reality. Right. That moment of self-awareness, like, holy crap. Like, really?
This is what it's come down to.
That's what it's come down to? I'm stealing to the point where it doesn't, the high doesn't even feel good. And I ended up having to go to, not have to. I chose to move to Lake Tahoe, and I was like, dang. You woke me up. I chose to go to Lake Tahoe. I was up there. That was 2004. The only thing that mattered was using. And you know what's crazy? That was the Philadelphia Eagles that was that year that they went to the championship against the Patriots, right? When they played Tom Brady.
Yeah.
And they lost, right? I didn't even know that my team, right, that I've loved ever since I was a kid, was doing that good, because all that mattered was I didn't have enough time to sit and watch a football game, right? There's drugs still on the table, you know what I'm saying? I didn't even take a shower. Why would I take, what I'm saying? So I didn't even know that in 2005 that they went to the Super Bowl that year. It's crazy. I literally was in a bar Monday morning. My buddy just opened a bar, and I'm sitting there taking a shot, trying to bite the dog of the hair that bit me.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I'm watching the highlights, and I'm like, was the Super Bowl last night? Yeah. Who played? Eagles and Patriots. Eagles lost by such and such a points. What? Completely
I love the Eagles.
I love the Eagles.
They're like,
dude.
shut the fuck up, dude.
No, you love drugs, fool.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You love drugs and crimes and stuff and robbing people. So 2005, around I want to say January, I came back home. My dad, oh God, I'm so grateful for my dad because he came and helped me and he brought me. And in the middle of all this snow up in Lake Tahoe, right? I mean, and when it snows up there, it snows. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, a little bit, there's times where you can't even go to work because of how bad the snow is. He came all the way up there and helped me move all my stuff back. And I moved back in with them. And then one more time, like I'm the boomerang kid. That's the way I refer to myself. I'm that boomerang kid of the family. Throw me away no matter how far I go. Come flying back. You know? And that's my story. I was always that kid, always getting in trouble and come home. He came up to get me, drove me back, and I went and I got help from the state. I claimed a couple disabilities. It was my hearing, and I think my ADHD and some other disability. And with those, the state was going to help me and fund my college. But what I had to do was I had to pay for my tuition and pay for my book. They gave me a little bit of help with my books, but they would reimburse me of all of it when I would finish the semester or I'd finish the year. And I started going to school, and it was cool. I liked it at first until like I'm sitting there and I'm literally like zoned out, can't hear anything that the teacher is teaching because all I can think of is, I know so-and-so lives down the street, and I know he just got a bag. I know he just scored some dope. I know he's got some breezies. We used to call them breezies back in the day. Got some breezies over there, and we're going to go, and I know they're there, and I can go over there and smoke dope, smoke some meth, or I could stay here. And I would just, it's break time. Okay, I'm going to go to the bathroom and not come back. And I didn't go back to school for probably a month. And the state, which was a counselor, his name was Steve Miller. And if he hears this, dude, I really want to help him. I know I need to keep anonymity or whatever. But Steve Miller, he was a counselor in this program. And I went to talk to him, and I went to tell him, because he went looking for me. He was like, dude, we're trying to call you and you're not answering. And that's because I was off running, you know. And he called me into his office, and I went in to talk to him, and all I could tell him was like, dude, I really am grateful for the golden opportunity that you guys gave me, but I'm screwing it off because I don't know how to stop using drugs, man. And he said, well, you know what? I think that you can get some help from the state. There's a place called Central Intake. You go down to Central Intake downtown. They'll interview you, and they'll figure out where you want to go. I went to Central Intake, and they interviewed me and asked me a bunch of questions. They asked me like about my hat. I had a Fresno Bulldogs hat on, so they thought I was a bulldog. Thought I was a gang member. I'm like, no, I'm not a gang member, man. Like, come on, just I found this hat in the back dumpster somewhere. What do you mean? They said, well, we have a 30-day treatment center. I said, no, I can't do 30 days. I'll be getting high in 30 days. You need to put me in somewhere longer, right? Lock me away, lock me up, throw away the key. You know what I mean? And they recommended Recovery House, which was a treatment center in French Camp, right behind the hospital in Stockton. And you know anything about Stockton?
I got clean in Stockton.
Okay. So Matthews Road?
Yeah.
You ever notice that area, Matthews Road? It's like criminal central.
Yeah.
Right? If you die from an overdose, if you have an overdose, you can go to the hospital. And then once you have your overdose, we're going to send you to the treatment center behind the hospital. And if you go to the treatment center and you use while you're in the treatment center, you get arrested. Now you're going to go to the prison or the honor camp, which is on the same road, Matthews Road. Yeah. So it's like recovery / drug addict central. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I don't know.
When you could bounce from one revolving door to the next and never stay straight, right? You could just your life can just persist in that one block area. Because where I got clean was Wilson and Charterway right there.
Oh man,
that's where I stayed for 6 months. Yeah, I was when we walked through it, right? A kid from Los Banos, and I'm like, okay, we got to get to recovery at work, right? Or we got to get to surrender to live. So we got to walk 40 minutes through South Stockton. For me, that was like, what the fuck's going on
Yeah,
here,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
You know, I wasn't used to that,
Yeah.
right?
And you're walking past people that are like trying to sell a broken lampshade with a frayed cord.
Well, they knew us
for
because
some crack.
we were all tucked in, right? We were tucked in with collared shirts and belts,
Stand out like a sore thumb.
and they're like, Sally boys,
Sally
right? They'd
boy.
make fun of us, right?
Yeah.
But it was good. They left us alone, right?
Yeah.
So this is where it starts for Heath, then, right? Like you're finally getting the help, right? So what does that look like? Like, did you have the epiphany, like, I'm gonna change, or was it just kind of like, this is I need help, I don't know what to do? Like, what did that look like?
All right. So March 27th was my last day using, and like I said, I didn't want to. The drugs weren't working anymore. Even though I got high that morning, the pain that I was feeling, the all the stuff I was running from, all the everything inside me, that the drugs didn't work anymore to stop that stuff. It would come to the surface every time I'd get high. So that morning I got high. I was literally in a dope house. Nowadays they call them trap houses, whatever you want to call them. But this was a place where everybody would get together and get high. And I remember feeling something like happening, and I didn't know what it was. And so all of a sudden, so the person who lived in the house, right? He left to go to the emergency room that morning, and I knew that when he left to go to the emergency room, he was gonna be gone for a heck of long. Didn't really care. Cool, I'll just kick it here until he gets back. And then one of the dealers comes by and he smokes me out. And then all of a sudden, oh yeah, this is so and so's house. Oh yeah. Oh, he snitched out so and so. Oh yeah, And next thing you know, this whole thing. Oh, we got papers on him. All this stuff. All this happened, and now we're like literally taking anything that's worth any like money, out of this person's house, and it's not even his stuff. Right? It's like, it's everybody's stuff, but we're stealing stuff and loading it into the car. I, at that time, felt something was going on, and I felt paranoid. I'm already high, well, kind of high, but I'm paranoid. And so I go upstairs after trying to steal a Comcast cable box. Hey, have you ever heard anybody getting any money for a Comcast cable box? In my mind, it made perfect sense. I'm going to sell somebody this Comcast cable box. They're going to get cable. So, yeah. Oh, man, my phone's probably been buzzing this whole time.
We can't hear it.
Oh, okay.
It's good.
So, yeah, I steal this Comcast cable box, and I run down the stairs, and the two cars that were there were no longer there. It just drove off. The last car drove off, and there's a hole in the fence with two boards we just kicked out, and we were loading everything out of, and I'm the only one in the house. So I dropped the Comcast cable box. What am I going to do with this? Walking around everywhere? I literally was like a mile from my mom and dad's house, and I took the long way home because I knew that. Oh, let me back up. Oh, wow. I knew that when I got to their house, they were gonna kick me out because they had enough. What happened was I was getting high at their house previously because I was living with them, and for some reason, somehow, a needle and a spoon was left in my 8-year-old niece's room. And she could have found that. And my dad, I was calling him to tell him, hey, Dad, while you guys were gone, I had because he's a good codependent. My dad was a codependent then. And I called him to say, Dad, I left a 40 of St. Ides in the fridge, right? Remember the St. Ides, quick letter I? And that was my malt liquor back then. And I said, dude, can you please take the 40 ounce out of the fridge and dump it so before Mom finds it? And he says, Mom found more than the alcohol in the fridge. I think you need to come home and talk to us because you're probably not going to live here anymore. So now back to leaving from the dope house through the fence. I'm literally walking with a Walkman in my hand. They have the thing called Walkman, CD Walkman.
Yeah.
For the younger viewers and younger audience, we used to have a thing where you played your CDs in something that was portable, with some earphones that went from a cord to your ear.
You had to hold it like this.
And you had to hold it like this so it wouldn't skip. Yeah. And so I had just found a single, right, by Beanie Siegel, right? And like I said, I'm a hip hop head, right? And I found a single by Beanie Siegel, and Beanie Siegel does a song called, at that time, it was the only release song of an album he was doing at that time that was coming out, I think on March 29th. And the song was called Feel It in the Air, right? And if you listen to the song, he's basically like,
He makes a Phil Collins song.
yeah, like I can feel something in the air. I got my spidey senses is tingling. I feel something coming on. And there's this part where he says, something's going on. I think it's the beginning part. He says, something's going on. I feel different. Something's going on. I feel funny. Can't tell me nothing different. My nose twitching. Intuition setting in like Steve Vision. I still close my eyes. I still see visions. I still hear that voice in the back of my mind. I still listen. So what I do, I take heed. I still listen. Right? So what I said all that because that was a foretelling of what was going to happen for me, and I didn't even know. I felt something changing. I felt something in the air. I felt like things were going to happen. I didn't know if it was going to be good. I didn't know if it was going to be bad, but something's got to change. And later I went and, like I said, I talked to that counselor, and you know, he got me into a treatment center, and I think. Yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah. So what does that early part of recovery look like for you? Like you get put into a treatment facility and you start getting exposed, because you were already exposed to recovery way back when you were 15.
Right.
So like, what's the change between then and now? Like, I mean, because you wouldn't say desperation, but you're at the point of dereliction, right? And things couldn't get much worse unless you died out there.
Right. So I'm a firm believer that I got clean the day before I died.
Right.
I got clean the day before I died. And I say that because the year in 2005 in Stockton, we were like in Stockton was the 5th highest in the FBI list of the most dangerous cities, most violent crimes. And not only that, like, the people I was running with, the people I was like that I was stealing from and stealing from dealers and stealing from, you know, all the people I was intermingled with, like that lifestyle, like they say, if the drugs don't kill you, the lifestyle will. I thoroughly believe that I was one day away from dying.
You were right in the mix.
Right in the mix. And so, yeah. So did that answer your question?
Yeah. So I mean, but even like, what did it look like? Did you walk into the rooms and were you like, I'm here to get clean, or did you walk in there and just keep to yourself? Did you like what was your mentality like? Because I mean, you're pretty far gone at this point, right?
So, yeah. So most of what I was wearing was stuff I found like in a garage or in a dumpster somewhere. I mean, I didn't have money for anything else. And I walked with a limp, like a gangster limp, right? 'Cause I thought I was gangster, right? Yeah. Here I am, a kid born raised in North Stockton in the suburbs, you know, middle class suburbs, but I'm gangster, right? You know what I mean? And I walked with this limp, and I walked with it. I remember walking. I was with my friend Matt and some other friends. I just got let out of my 2-week blackout. Oh man, it was the longest 2 weeks I ever had in my life, man.
Right.
I can't use a cell phone. I'm seeing people walk by, get on the bus, and I can't go. I can't call my mom. I can't call my dad. I need cigarettes. Yeah. So I had just gotten done with my 2 weeks blackout, and my buddy says, hey, we're going to go to a meeting, an NA meeting. I'm like, where? He's like, well, it's called Trailer Group. It's like out towards the east side. Because you know anything about Stockton, he said east side and trailer. And I was like, what? Like, you know what I mean? Like, where are we going,
We're going
bro?
to Okieville.
Yeah. I'm like, yeah, we're going to Okieville. Gonna kick it in someone's trailer. And we got on the bus and we drove on and we rode all the way there, and then we got off at the bus stop, after making a couple exchanges like that, on transitions or whatever on different buses. And we walked into this meeting that was just packed out, dude. Back in that day, trailer group was packed, man, like to the point where people were sitting on tables, people were standing, like just full, man. And I remember sitting there thinking, like, what in the world? Why are all these people here? I knew why, but it's just what. But like, why would you still keep coming here? I thought they were all in treatment. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like me. And they called up for somebody to come up and get their 30-day key tag. And I remember like all of a sudden, okay, now I got to turn it on. I got to turn on the limp, that white boy swag, and walk up and act all tough. Give the guy a hug, you know them hugs.
Yeah,
you
the
put
good
your
ones.
arm right here and thanks. What was your name? Oh, my name's Heath and I got 30 days. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't even know how to talk right. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I limped. I did my gangster limp, my stroll. You know what I'm saying? My strut back to my chair, and I sat down. And to me, I felt like I needed to like show people I was tough.
Right.
To like show people I was this hardcore individual. But really, I was a shaky, insecure, scared little kid on the inside, man.
Well, that's that fear, right?
Right.
That's that fear of like, I can't let you close to me, or you might find out who I really am. Right. And those are the things you learn to survive.
Right. Yeah.
So what does that look like for you? I mean, you go to your first meeting after blackout, you collect your 30-day tag, and then you just keep going to these meetings because that's what everybody was doing around you, or did you feel something?
Yeah. H and I came through. There was a man that brought the message to me. Rest in peace. His name was David B. He brought the message to me, and he had a whole panel of people at H and I.
Yeah.
And for those that don't know, H and I is hospitals and institutions, and what that is they bring a meeting to you in the treatment center where you're at because they know you can't get to outside meetings, or if you're just so yeah. A lot of those people that were in that H&I meeting with me started going to meetings, and they would go to Surrender to Live, and they would go to Trailer Group, and they would go to a page in the book, and all these different meetings that were really full at that time. And it was just cool to go to a place with a bunch of drug addicts and just hang out. You know what I mean? So, sometimes even during lunch when we'd have a little break between our groups and stuff, somebody had a car and we'd jump in the car and we'd run to a meeting and hang out at the meeting and then leave right after the prayer and go back to treatment. It wasn't that I was like trying to be part of the cool crowd. I just wanted to do something different than running to a dope house and running around town all over the place with a broken CD Walkman, listening to Beanie Siegel. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, but thank God for Beanie Siegel, right? For giving that hope shot.
He did, dude. He gave me that. You don't even know it. You don't even know it, man.
What's the shift, right? Where's the shift go from like, I'm just going to these meetings to like, I'm gonna find out what this recovery thing's all about? Can you remember a shift point?
Yeah, to be honest with you, the shift didn't happen for me until about like I had probably 14 months of recovery. I was going to AA and I was going to NA, but the only reason why I was going to NA was because I thought it was cool to be around the drug addicts, and a friend of mine, and God rest his soul, Joe Wood, he's the one that brought the message to me, because he told me, he's like, yeah, man, we're over here and I'm out here at Surrender to Live, whatever, come hang out. And I started hanging out with him. I was living in a halfway house, sober living environment, as they call it.
Yeah.
Back then we called them halfway houses. And it was a work furlough spot. Last Chance, right? The place was called Last Chance. And you would work for your bed, room and board, you know, and you would work for your food and whatever, you know, you just go work for about 8 hours and then go to a meeting. At that time, I didn't feel comfortable in AA, just to be honest with you. I know for some people that works, and that's great. I love that there's recovery for all types, you know what I'm saying? Whatever your thing may be. Some people are hope to die dope fiends that go to AA meetings, and some are, you know, same thing, and they go to NA meetings. Wherever your home's at, you know, that's cool. But I didn't connect with what was being said in the AA meetings. So my buddy Joe said, hey, come over here and we'll start going to meetings here. And so I started riding. I would ride my bike all the way out to Surrender to Live. And I was just going just to go. And especially because at Surrender to Live, they could smoke inside the meeting. So I was just going to get cigarettes and hang out and smoke. And the shift happened when I started to find a home. Like when I realized that NA was my home. That was my refuge. That was my place of safety, my place of security, my place of belonging. And I didn't need to ever feel again like I didn't fit in. And it all started happening for me when I started sitting in the meetings and I heard sponsorship being mentioned. And people would, at one meeting I was at, I think it was Page in the Book, and it kept being said, sponsorship is a two-way street. Those who want the most out of the program get the most out of their sponsorship. Sponsorship is the heartbeat of the program. All this stuff, and I would just be like, why are they talking about sponsorship so much? I didn't have a sponsor.
Right.
I didn't have a sponsor for 15 months, man. And I talked to a couple people about it, and I talked to my friend Joe, and he suggested somebody, and that guy was my sponsor for probably the first 5 years of my recovery. So
how'd that change things for you? I mean,
go ahead.
How did that change things for you? I mean, finding that first sponsor, I got to imagine that's probably part of the shift, right? Yeah. The shift that happened was I realized that I needed help spotting my self-deception, right? Because it's like they say, and it's like it is in the literature in one of our pamphlets, right? And where we hang out, in that pamphlet, it says that, you know, someone says, why should you get a sponsor? And the answer is, well, it's impossible to spot self-deception it's impossible to spot self-deception with the same mind that created it. Right. So I had no clue that what was going on during that whole year was I was deceiving myself that I was going to be able to stay clean with just attending meetings and not working a program and not working 12 steps. A friend of mine says, he says it all the time when he talks, he says, being in a 12-step program and not working 12 steps is like being in a motorcycle club without a motorcycle. Right. So I didn't know that I was deceiving myself that whole time, that I was going to white knuckle it and be able to stay clean. Because I still found myself riding my bike over to places where people were using and hanging out, passing the pipe. I'm not going to get high. I'm strong enough because I can pass the pipe. The insanity in that, right? Right. You know, no, I'm not going to get high. I promise, you know, but I'm going to hang out with you guys because I don't have any other friends. I think the shift started happening when I realized that where I belonged was right there in that 12-step fellowship. Well, what a blessing to get clean in a place like Stockton.
Yeah.
Right. Like honestly, like
I got clean. I got clean where I used.
Right. Well, like for me, I had to go somewhere for an extended period of time. Right. And like one of my buddies said, man, you're going to go get clean in the devil's asshole. Right. That's what he told me when I went there to get clean. Right. Yeah. But what I found was like some of the strongest recovery was right there on the front line. Right. Like I would sit in there in these book studies and these guys would be going back and forth, bam, bam, bam. And like they're not even knowing, but they're pouring into this guy's just sitting there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And just sitting there.
Yeah.
And I learned so much just being present. Right. And like to get clean in that city for me, I have a love for that city. Right.
Yeah. The thing with the Stockton that happened for me was we moved there when I was 4. Like I said, I was adopted, and when my mother put me up for adoption, I didn't know anything other than she was 14.
Right.
And I moved to Stockton, and just living a life, as a kid or whatever and stuff. But I always wondered, like, where she was. Did she live down the street from me? Did she live a town over in Lodi? Like where did this, what happened? I would love to meet her one day. And you know what? Like, I didn't know for a long time anything. It wasn't until I was 46 years old when me and my wife bought this house, December of 2020. We got this house, and I ended up finding out that my mother lived in Vacaville, and she had 3 brothers and sisters, or 1 sister and 2 brothers. And I didn't even know who they were until I got a call one day, actually a message one day on Facebook. And it's so crazy because I was working my 4th step, and I was working my 6th step, and I was writing about resentments, and I was writing about like forgiveness and all this stuff. And I didn't know that the real forgiveness that needed to happen was for myself.
Right.
But I couldn't forgive myself until I could finally forgive my mom, because I didn't know that what was going on until I found her, or found her brothers and sister. I didn't know that what happened was she was also somebody that might have been a potential addict. She was partying and whatever, and she jumped on the back of a motorcycle when I was 4 years old, living in Stockton, in Vacaville, and she jumped on the back of a motorcycle, and the cops were chasing her because the guy who was driving the motorcycle was wanted and had warrants. And so they drove. They followed her and followed the cops, chased her and chased them, and then they came to a hard turn somewhere on the outskirts of town in Vacaville, Vaca Valley Road, and she flew off the bike. He died on the scene. She died in a hospital that night. So here I am, like 4 years old, not even knowing at all what's going on, and what's so beautiful, dude, is the fact that I had done enough healing and enough work on myself that when the opportunity happened because I had to spit in a vial and stuff like that and send it off to 23andMe and get in, and then I'll find out who my family is through my family tree of DNA and all that stuff. And I ended up finding her, and it was in this house here where I was able to let a balloon go with a letter of forgiveness for her. I wrote a letter to her and everything I ever needed to say. And I learned how to do that by writing in steps. I learned how to do that by writing during meetings. Whenever, you see people with their flat book and stuff, and they're answering questions during whatever in meetings. I learned how to do that, and I wrote everything I ever needed to say to her. And it was a letter of forgiveness, a letter of understanding, and that she was just a kid, dude. Right. She was just a kid. She couldn't raise a baby in a house with an environment that she was in. She was in a bad environment where her dad was an alcoholic, her mom was abusive to her. She couldn't have raised a kid in that. She couldn't have done it. So she did the best thing she could have ever done by giving me a life, by giving me a way so that other people could give me a life.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know how that. I don't even know how that happened.
Well, it rings true that God's been doing for you what you couldn't do for yourself all along the way, right? And it took this long to recognize that you've been saved for a reason,
right?
Like you're here. Like God don't make junk.
No,
God don't make junk, right? And she did the best thing with the tools that she had as a 14-year-old, right? And probably now you can understand why that was probably the best scenario for you to get where you're at today.
Right.
As hard as that is to swallow.
Right.
So like, what does it mean to Heath, like being this far down the road, and like, how has that dynamic with your adopted family changed, right? Like, you were talking about how your dad showed up. He don't even care about sports, but he cares about you enough to wear a dark green shirt over to watch the Eagles play, right? Like what do those relationships mean to you? Like, because they've been forged in fire at this point.
Yeah, for sure. So the one thing I definitely will have to say is that, man, I am so grateful for that one cheerleader support group, that one supporter, my wife.
Right.
She walked me through that so gracefully and so loving, because she sat with me, like on the phone as I'm getting the phone call from them on Facebook. Right, we're FaceTiming, and I don't have an Apple. They did, but and here is my. An older man with a blonde-haired wife and a cell phone, and they're both talking to me, telling me, yeah. So my sister, because I put on that 23andMe, like I put on that 23andMe that, hey, my mother was this age. This is where the hospital I was born at. This is the city I was born in. If anybody knows anything, please let me know. And they were like, literally, like, she stood there recording me talking to them on the very first time that I've ever seen and laid eyes on people that were a part of, like, when I first, like, showed up here on planet Earth.
I got tingles for some reason when you were saying that. My hair jumped down my arm.
Yeah, man. It was a great experience. Honestly, like, I got a message on Facebook from my uncle's wife, and it literally is like saying, you know, my husband is a 48.3% match with you in DNA, and we've been waiting our whole life to meet you, and this is a Christmas miracle. And I'm like, who the heck do I owe money to? Where did this come from? Is this a scam? Is it a scheme? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, I'm on the phone with him. I told the whole family, because on my wife's side, they are all supportive and they all know my story.
Yeah.
And not just with drugs, but with finding, like, wondering who she was.
Yeah.
And you know what's so crazy is they all of a sudden went silent, and they're like, what? Could it be her? And I'm come to find out while I'm having this conversation that she had died when I was 4. It was bittersweet.
Right.
It was sweet that it was wonderful that I found him, but I would have loved to have been able to give my mom a hug. But you know what, though? My mom, and this might sound crazy to some people, man, my birth mom visits me every morning when rainbows come through on the chandelier through our front window. My mom still comes and sees me whenever I see a hummingbird. Whenever I see a hummingbird, because when I let that balloon go in the backyard, with the letter of forgiveness attached to it, a hummingbird flew in the backyard, flew right in front of my wife's face, and then flew over and sat on a branch, and it stood there and it's not stood, but well, maybe sat there for like maybe 10 minutes. And there's ways that I believe that, because I'm more spiritual now and I'm more open-minded, right, to receive the message, or whatever the message may be, that I believe that she visits me. She talks to me. It happens even with my former sponsor, Amio and Raider Joe. They talk to me. I'm in a car sometimes and I can hear their voice clear as day. And I'm like, are you sitting in the car next to me? Like, I know it sounds weird, dude, but
no, it sounds. I'm open to it.
This is the stuff that happens now that It's so much more than just I'm not a carpet farmer no more. Right. It's so much more than I don't smoke kitty litter and birdseed off the carpet no more. I came in here with so much more baggage than I really thought, and a lot of that baggage got unpacked, right? By working the steps, by using a sponsor, by getting just vulnerable like this, and telling people like where I'm at, you know. So yeah, man, like I would have not been open to seeing that type of stuff. And thank God for my wife, because she's all into like the saging and and crystals and what I mean, not those type of crystals.
Yeah. I
you
get
know.
it. I got them right here.
Yeah. She's into all that. You know what I mean? She says she like sees her mom, her grandmother visits her whenever she sees owls. Whenever and then a white owl flies. It's the same owl. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Right? Okay, cool. It's like, and I started seeing the owl. You know what I'm saying? It's like, whoa. I believe that our loved ones on the other side, they talk to us.
Yeah.
But you got to be open.
Yeah. My great grandmother carried me through treatment. She was my higher power.
Yeah.
Right. Until I, and that's evolving for me. Like, I don't know where my spirituality is going to take me. Right. But I'm open to it.
Yeah.
Right. So when I hear things like that, that's exciting to me because I want to stay open-minded and I want to understand. Right.
Yeah,
I want to understand what's going on with people so I can understand what's going on with me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
And so,
sure.
so what keeps you in recovery, Heath? Because it's been a long time now. Like
18 years in 1 month.
So what keeps you coming back?
What keeps me coming back?
What keeps you coming back?
Honestly, what keeps me coming back is staying small. Staying small. Humility is essential to staying clean as food and water is to staying alive. I got to be humble, which means even the microphone, YouTube, Instagram, wherever this is at, whatever platform we're using, it's not even about you. It's not even about me, right? It's about simply letting someone know, right, that they can have a life,
Right.
that they can buy a house one day, that they could get a good job one day, that they could learn how to love one day and like love themselves and love others. Like that's what keeps me coming back. And it's not just about not using drugs. I mean, yes, that's a big thing. I mean, that's I mean, we're a society of men and women who want to stay off drugs, right?
Yeah.
But I believe that like it's so much more than that, because what keeps me coming back is actually experiencing life as it is today. Even if it's just a day that just doesn't go right. Because the way Emil used to say it, there's no such thing as bad days. There's just bad moments.
Right.
And I still to this day go by that. The minute I'm walking around and it's just, oh man, I stubbed my toe and oh, I didn't get paid for my job today and they're late on the check and everything seems to keep falling apart as long as the day goes on. I have to remind myself like this isn't a bad day, because I know a bad day.
Yeah.
A bad day is when you miss and you can't get your dope in your arm and you're literally bleeding everywhere. And you just use the last of the money that you have to get high. And now you got to go do another crime, go lie to somebody else, and go get some more. That's a bad day.
Right.
Almost on the verge of dying and not caring because, you know what? Hey, I just need to get high. That's a bad day. Yeah. So, yeah, and the other thing that keeps me coming back is, man, I get to connect with people like Jesse and you, and I get to let them see me, like this guy, like who I am, right, and who they are, and I get to connect with you and back and forth and talk, and there was a time when I couldn't have a conversation, man, unless it was about bad dope, good dope, stealing cars. How to cook dope, most of what I had to talk about was nothing. And today I get to have connections with people, even if they're Niners fans.
Right? We don't discriminate in recovery.
Yeah.
We don't discriminate.
Even if they're Cowboys fans. I got a brother-in-law who's a Cowboys fan, man. And even though I can't stand the Cowboys, I love him.
Yeah, your hat's hurting my feelings like for the last hour. It's been hurting my feelings.
Fly, Eagles, fly.
So let's do this, right? And wrapping up, like say somebody's listening to this, right? And they're out there and they're struggling, they're hurting. Like what would you tell somebody like that to encourage them that there is another way?
rephrase the question.
So, like, if somebody happens to stumble upon this podcast and they're listening, right, and they may be in their addiction right now, or they're struggling, or they're hurting, like, what would you tell somebody to encourage them to keep pushing? That life does change, life does get better. There is hope beyond where you're at. Like, what would you tell somebody?
For one, if you are listening, I don't know how you are listening unless you just stumbled upon this. If you feel like there's no hope, there's hope. If you feel like you know what, like I can't stop because of such and such and such, you can. I think that it's important for those that are out there to know that there's a way of life. There's a way of life, and this way of life that you're living right now is not the way of life that you're supposed to have. You are worth more than the disease is telling you you're worth. You are worth more than all of what you've been doing. There's so much more. There's more to this. There's always been that one question that I always had whenever I was getting high is there anything more than this? Is this all there is? Just this and getting high and going back and forth and running here, back there, back, spending $20, you know what I'm saying? And then going back with another $20, you know what I'm saying? There's so much more in this life. All you have to do is reach out and ask for help. And then we live in a world now where you can be on YouTube, and while you're on YouTube, you can click over, and while you're listening to this, and go on Google and put in a question and put in this, I think I have a drug problem. How can I get help? And there'll be a myriad of things that pop up, right? Whether it's one fellowship or another fellowship or whatever. So if you need help, it's just within beyond your reach. If you need help from drugs or alcohol, or you just want to get your life straight, man, all you got to do is just reach out for help. Whether that's go to a meeting, whether that's go to a treatment, whether that's just telling your family member, I need help. And if there's somebody that has a family member that is struggling, right? You can also find them help, but they have to be willing. Right. They have to be willing. I think it's very important to let people know that there's an answer. There's an answer, because we have the answer, right? Like me, you, we have the answer,
right?
But an answer doesn't do any good unless someone asks the question.
Exactly.
And so maybe whoever's listening needs to ask themselves the question, am I a drug addict? Am I an alcoholic? Do I have a problem? And more than likely, if you're asking yourself that question, the answer is yes. Yes. If you're asking yourself, normal people don't go, oh, do I have a problem? No. They, you know what I mean? No, they drink their glass of wine and go to bed. You know what I mean? Half a glass of wine. You know what I mean?
Yeah, who does that?
Right. So, yeah, man, if you need help, just reach out.
That's it.
Just reach out.
Perfect. I think we did it, Heath. You owe me a hug, man.
Yeah? Hey,
I'm making on my tippy toes.
All right.
Oh, thank you so much.
Appreciate you, man.
I appreciate you. I think we did like an hour and a half.